Today's episode: plot structure in scripts and scenes. If you ask someone in Hollywood what makes a good script, they will say script is conflict. That is not completely true. Yes, you need people in conflict, but if that was totally true, the loudest story would win. Scripts are about two or more characters fighting over what they believe in. Values and the theme you want the characters to explore drive the story. So typically, in the first few moments of a script, not only do we see the values of the main character, but the values of the opponent. You see, it all comes back to your theme. That's right. It's your job to determine the big lesson you are planning to teach, and the script will only be the story you use to teach that idea. So let's look at the movie. How about, The Wizard of Oz. Yeah. So there's this girl named Dorothy, right? Let's make this girl right here Dorothy. And we know that there's this tornado, and it kind of sweeps Dorothy up and carries her to a magical land somewhere over the rainbow called Oz. Okay, great. Let's look at the plot structure of the movie. So here's the beginning. At the beginning of the film, Dorothy wants to escape her humdrum life, so that must be the theme, right? No. You see, that's just the normal. There's this inciting incident, or tornado. Dorothy now has a want. Dorothy wants to go, wait for it, home. And every scene of the film will get Dorothy closer to or farther away from her home. You see, this tornado was her inciting incident, and Dorothy will spend the rest of the movie trying to get back to what's important to her. Like I said, her home. And like we said earlier, we also meet the opposing force. The witch is just one of the enemies, and we see what she wants. She wants Dorothy's ruby slippers. And we get to see our theme expressed through Dorothy and her values, and the witch and characters like the witch and their values. That's how we begin to see the theme. You see, Dorothy is on a journey to rediscover what she already had. And the witch and the characters like the witch, they're trying to get something that's not theirs. See, that begins to hint at our theme. We must learn to appreciate what we already have. And each scene in the movie will explore that idea. So, we get Dorothy, and she ends up meeting a number of characters who are looking to find something they already have, like the Scarecrow who wants a brain, the Tin Man who wants a heart, and the Lion who wants courage. And we get to see them against the other characters in the film, like the Witch. These are the characters whose values are the opposite of Dorothy's, and whose opposite values are preventing her from getting home. The witch's lust for Dorothy's shoes is keeping Dorothy from reaching Oz to ask for help, and even the wizard is working against Dorothy. He wants the witch's broom, something that is not his. So, before we get to the end of the film, let's look at plot structure, because almost all plots work this way. We meet a protagonist, or sometimes protagonists, and we learn what normal looks like for these particular characters. The normal is broken by some event, and the protagonist now has something he or she wants to get or do. An antagonist or antagonists, who usually have something they want, get in the way of the protagonist and become an obstacle in the protagonist's journey, and the protagonist achieves his or her want or does not. Furthermore, by fighting for what the character wanted, this character usually finds something he or she needed all along but didn't know. Want and need are usually different. The want was something the character was physically pursuing, and the need, desire, was something inside that needed to change about the character. This is usually something psychological, and the protagonist character changes as a result. This is usually the place the theme is revealed, and it is the lesson you were trying to teach the audience all along. So, The Wizard of Oz works this way. You see, Dorothy was a farm girl who wanted off the farm. A tornado gave her her wish, and now she wants to go home. A witch wants something that was given to Dorothy to protect her on her journey. And by overcoming all the obstacles on her journey, including the witch and the wizard, Dorothy fulfills her want and learns that all she ever needed was to appreciate what she already had. After all, there's no place like home. Oh, that was cheesy, wasn't it? Well, your scripts and your scenes will also follow this formula. So, let's say that you have a theme in mind, right? Or maybe you have an idea for a story. What do? Okay, Listen, if you have not watched my video on log lines and treatments, stop here and come back later. You're not going to write a script first. You will need to start by creating a treatment. So if you have a theme in mind, ask yourself this question. What is a situation and character that will help me teach this lesson? If you have a story concept in mind, ask yourself, what lesson am I trying to teach with this story? Your characters will eventually need to teach and accomplish this lesson. Why is a theme so important? Oh, it's easy. If you are not passionate about your idea, and if your story does not inspire change in some way, you will not care about the movie you create. And guess what? Your audience will not care either. Let's review. Almost all plots work this way. We meet a protagonist, or sometimes protagonists, and we learn what normal looks like for this particular character. The normal is broken by some event, and the protagonist now has something he or she wants to get or do. An antagonist, or antagonists, who usually have something they want, get in the way of the protagonist and become an obstacle in the protagonist's journey. And the protagonist achieves his or her want or does not. Furthermore, by fighting for what the character wanted, this character usually finds something he or she needed all along but didn't know. Remember, want and need are usually different. The want was something the character was physically pursuing, and the desire is usually something that needed to change about the character inside. So, how does this work for a scene? Well, let me draw a scene for you. Okay, there's the beginning, there's the middle, and there's the end. Do you recognize that structure? See, you're going to first create a number of scenes that will lead the protagonist from the first moment of your script to the last moment. And the truth is, every scene you create will also follow this structure. Yeah, the same structure we saw in The Wizard of Oz. First, a scene is usually driven by one character. The protagonist drives it, the antagonist drives it, or sometimes a supporting character drives that particular scene. The character who drives the action of the scene will enter the scene. And the character will experience a change at some point in the scene. He or she will be different at the end of the scene, and it's your job to determine what causes the change for that character in that scene. And the energy of the scene will increase between the moment when the character begins to change and the moment when the change is complete. Every scene is a mini script. How about that? See, every scene has the same plot structure, and they all come together to make this bigger plot structure. Okay, let's look at what some of the changes can be in the scenes you create. In scenes towards the beginning of the script, we see the normal of the world and hints about the change the protagonist is hoping for. We also see hints of the antagonist. And we see moments that change the character and start him or her on his adventure. This is where we learn what the protagonist wants. And the greatest number of scenes occur in the middle of the script. These are moments that get the protagonist closer to or further away from what the character wants. Moments in your scenes that can change the protagonist are challenges he or she overcomes, and new information he or she learns. In this section, the protagonist pursues his or her goal, and it usually always goes wrong. The more obstacles your character needs to overcome, the more exciting your movie will be. And these can also be scenes where the antagonist is going after what he or she wants, causing obstacles for the protagonist. Occasionally, you will also have a scene with a supporting character who is helping the protagonist or antagonist get closer to what they want. I should point out that these characters are usually exploring the same theme. The antagonist usually has the opposite perspective on the theme, and the sidekicks and henchmen usually take the side of the character they are teamed with. Okay, so let's go back to The Wizard of Oz for a second. Do you remember that moment in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy gets kidnapped and brought to the witch? You see, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion are the only people who go to rescue her, and they're the only people in the scene. Still, they are helping to return Dorothy home. And so, see, they're ultimately helping to further the theme. They're not doing something completely random and different. So, let's get to the end of our movie. Scenes towards the end of the script are usually the most intense, and they center around the moments when the character takes on the greatest challenges. We see the protagonist get what he or she wants, and we see the change that success or defeat causes in the protagonist. All right. What should we do now? Let's see. As a final review, let's imagine a scene and apply these rules. Oh, we can also give some tips that will make creating your characters easier. So, well, you need a theme. Maybe it is, if you don't take risks in life, life will pass you by. And let's explore this theme using this boy right here. Okay, so what can we do? I know. This boy wants to ask out a girl. Oh, classic love story, and there's the girl. We'll explore the theme through these two characters. And let's say that this girl might go out with him if he asks. Okay, you would start the scene by describing the environment and what is going on in that environment. If you have watched my tutorial on script software, you know how to do that. So, the boy came in liking the girl, but the inciting incident of the scene occurs when he sees her alone and realizes there is a potential to ask her out. He now wants to ask. He has a want. When the boy walks into the room and sees the possibility to ask the girl out, the change has occurred. He can never go back. So even if it is going to go wrong, he intends on asking her out. He has an expectation in his mind. He is imagining what it will be like, and he thinks it will go well. In addition, what is the girl and the other characters in the room doing? They are living people too, so they are doing things. Many of them also have their own wants. The scene now is about the tension between the two characters. Maybe the boy walks over. Oh, and then what happens? Well, we need to explore the theme, right? We see the boy struggle with risk. He's afraid to ask her out. It doesn't go the way he expected, and he stalls. And this guy comes in. Oh, well, we all know someone like this guy, right? This guy also wants to ask the girl out. Remember, when you are creating antagonists and other characters, they are not there to revolve around the protagonist. Characters like this guy and the girl have their own personalities and wants. Their wants just happen to create an obstacle for the protagonist, and these characters are exploring the theme too. For example, this guy doesn't stall. He takes risks. He is a contrast to the boy. Writing your characters with this in mind will make it easier for the actors to create full characters. So, what happens? The boy takes too long, the girl goes out with this guy, and the boy is changed forever. This sets us up for the next scene. How will the boy adjust to try and get the girl? And the more things you make him do to try and get that girl, the more interesting it will be. Like we said at the beginning, it all comes back to your theme. It is your job to determine the big lesson you are planning to teach your audience, and the script will be the story you use to teach that idea. As always, start with a treatment. And remember that plot structure diagram. And you should be able to write both scenes and scripts. So that's it for another episode of Be the Teacher. You did a great job today, and hopefully you're ready to write scenes and scripts. There's a more specific scene Be the Teacher that uses many of the elements of this presentation, and if you're stuck on a scene idea, you might want to watch that next. Okay, see you next time on another episode of Be the Teacher.